let's just think about this for a second. It's May 1941. You have the most powerful battleship on the planet, a 50,000-ton steel monster, running loose in the Atlantic. It's just sunk the pride of the Royal Navy in a matter of minutes, and Britain's survival is literally on the line. So what do you send to stop it? A biplane? Covered in canvas? With a top speed that's slower than a lot of cars today? I know, it sounds like a bad joke, but this is the true story of how a piece of old tech became one of World War II's most unlikely and most important heroes. All right, let's get into it. This sentence right here, it basically says it all. And you know what? The Germans had every reason to laugh. On paper, the Swordfish was a flying antique, a total relic. But as they were about to find out the hard way, in a real fight, the spec sheet is only half the story. So let's meet our protagonist, the Fairey Swordfish. Now, its crews had this great nickname for it. They called it the Stringbag. You know, like those old string shopping bags that could stretch to carry just about anything? Well, that was the Swordfish. You could cram it with an unbelievable mix of stuff. Torpedoes, bombs, mines, you name it. But to pretty much everyone else, it looked like it belonged in a museum, not on a battlefield. I mean, just look at this comparison. It is absolutely staggering. You've got these modern fighters that are sleek, all-metal machines pushing well over 300 miles an hour. And then you have the Swordfish, barely hitting half that speed, with its 2 wings, its landing gear just hanging out in the wind, and a body made of fabric stretched over a metal frame. And the cockpit? It was open, totally exposed to the freezing North Atlantic gales or the blazing Mediterranean sun. By every single metric, this thing was obsolete.
It's a fair question, isn't it? At a time when aviation is just leaping forward, why would you be building something that looks like it flew straight out of World War I? It seems like a massive, massive miscalculation. But the real answer is, well, it's way more clever than you'd think.
And this is where it gets brilliant. See, these weren't flaws. They were features. Every one of them was a deliberate choice made for the brutal world of naval aviation. Think about it. That crazy slow landing speed, it was an absolute lifesaver when you're trying to land on a short carrier deck that's heaving up and down in a storm. A faster, more modern plane couldn't do it. That simple fabric and tube construction, it meant you could literally patch up battle damage with a needle and thread right there at sea. And that clunky fixed landing gear, it was simple, it was tough, and it never, ever failed. Every supposed weakness was actually a hidden strength. And the world was about to see just how potent those hidden strengths really were. The Swordfish's first big test was going to be in the Mediterranean, on a mission that the experts said was flat out impossible. A mission that would change naval warfare for good. So here's the strategic puzzle. Italy has this huge battle fleet, 6 battleships, and they're parked in their main naval base at Taranto. From there, they're basically choking off Britain's most important supply lines. A direct ship-to-ship battle would be a bloodbath. And the Italian fleet? They feel totally safe, tucked away behind anti-torpedo nets and a wall of anti-aircraft guns. They thought they were untouchable. Now, the Italians were convinced an aerial torpedo attack couldn't work, for one simple reason. The harbor was too shallow. A normal torpedo, when dropped from a plane, dives deep into the water first. In Taranto, it would just bury itself in the mud. But the British had a clever little hack. They bolted wooden fins onto their torpedoes. The idea was that the fins would break off on impact, forcing the torpedo to run just under the surface and only 30 feet of water. It was totally experimental, a massive gamble. Nobody knew if it would actually work. Just try to put yourself in that cockpit. You're launching into pitch-black darkness, flying for an hour and a half over a black, featureless ocean, finding your way by the stars. Then, the first planes drop flares. Suddenly, the entire harbor is lit up like it's broad daylight. The Italians are caught completely off guard. As their guns erupt, filling the sky with fire, the Swordfish pilots dive, skimming just 30 feet above the waves, flying straight into a hurricane of shells to drop their torpedoes. The result was an absolute catastrophe for the Italian Navy. For the loss of just 2 planes, 20 Swordfish put 3 battleships out of the fight. In one night, they sliced the Italian battle fleet in half. The balance of power in the Mediterranean just completely flipped. And maybe the most important consequence? Naval planners in Japan were watching. They studied Taranto very, very carefully, and less than a year later, they would use those lessons at a place called Pearl Harbor. As huge as Taranto was, the Swordfish's defining moment, its legend, was still to come. 6 months later, it would get the call to hunt the most feared warship on the seas, a ship that had just ripped the heart out of the Royal Navy, the Bismarck. You really have to get the psychological shock of this. HMS Hood wasn't just a ship. It was a national symbol, the biggest warship in the world. People in Britain thought it was invincible, and the Bismarck just erased it in minutes. A wave of pure dread swept across the country. This German battleship seemed unstoppable, and now it was out there, poised to cut Britain off from America for good. So now, it's a desperate race. The entire British fleet is chasing the Bismarck, but the German ship is just too fast. It's getting closer and closer to the safety of German air cover from France. If it gets there, it's home free. The British battleships are too far behind. There's only one final desperate shot, and it rests on the shoulders of the slow, old swordfish from the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal. And to make an impossible situation worse, the weather was apocalyptic. This wasn't just a storm, it was a force of nature. The flight deck of the carrier was plunging and soaring 40 feet in the waves. Winds were howling at 60 miles an hour. Just taking off was considered suicidal, but they had no other choice. This quote from one of the pilots, John Moffat, it puts you right there in that freezing, open cockpit with him. Can you imagine? The wind is so violent, you think the wings are just going to rip right off the plane. You're soaked, you're freezing, and you're being thrown around so much you can barely fly. And this isn't even the part where the enemy is shooting at you. This is just trying to survive the flight. Incredibly, they found the Bismarck. As its massive guns opened up on them, the Swordfish went in. And then the miracle happens. One torpedo, just one, hits the Bismarck in the one place it couldn't defend, its stern. The explosion didn't sink the ship. It did something far more devastating. It jammed the rudder hard over. Now the most powerful warship in the world was stuck, steaming in helpless circles. Her fate was sealed. The obsolete little biplane had landed the knockout blow that the rest of the fleet couldn't. So we've seen these amazing victories, but the story of the Swordfish is also a story of unbelievable courage and profound sacrifice, because not every mission was a success. Some of them were suicide missions from the moment they took off. In 1942, a German fleet made a run right up the English Channel in broad daylight. Lieutenant Commander Eugene Esmond, who was a hero from the Bismarck attack, was ordered to take his 6 swordfish and stop them. He knew, everyone knew, it was a death sentence. They had almost no fighter cover and would be facing hundreds of German fighters and the guns from the ships. Esmond was honest with his men about their chances. Not a single one backed down. The attack was over in less than 20 minutes. All 6 swordfish were shot out of the sky. Of the 18 men who flew that mission, 13 were killed, including Esmond. They never even scored a hit. Tactically, it was a complete failure. But as an act of raw courage, it was breathtaking. And maybe this is the most powerful testament of all. Because those words didn't come from a British admiral or a newspaper. They came from the German admiral they were attacking, Otto Ciliax. Even the enemy was in awe of their bravery. Esmond was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest honor for valor Britain can give. So when you look at all of this, the impossible victories, the heartbreaking losses, you have to ask, what's the real lesson here? How did this outdated machine do so much? Well, the answer has almost nothing to do with the airplane itself. This right here is the payoff. This one idea explains everything. The Bismarck was the superior tool. The Swordfish was, well, it was adequate. The difference maker, the thing that tipped the scales, was the superior people flying that adequate tool. And that changed everything. And this is what that really means. It means unbelievable levels of training. These crews were masters of their craft in the worst conditions imaginable. It means deep personal motivation, knowing your country's survival depended on you. It means being clever, turning your plane's slow speed into an advantage that messes up the enemy's targeting. And more than anything, it means having the sheer, absolute grit to fly through a wall of fire to get the job done. The real weapon system wasn't the Swordfish. It was the 3-man crew inside it. And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with technology, right? The fastest chip, the newest app, the latest update. But the story of the Swordfish is this powerful, timeless reminder that the tool is only ever part of the solution. Things like skill, courage, training, and pure determination, those are the real force multipliers. So the question isn't really about history, it's about today. In your own work, in your life, where does focusing on that human factor, on skill, on motivation, on grit, give you an edge that no amount of technology ever could?